Hey, Jason here from Simply Swider. So if your dishwasher just stops dead in the middle of a cycle, don't panic. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to diagnose and fix it.
Okay.
Good news is most of these problems
So
are
the
way
water has
simpler
not
than they look,
drained,
and you can definitely
but the
save
door
yourself
is
some serious
open.
money. Before we get started, if you run into any questions, jump into our Facebook group. Links in the description. We've got thousands of people helping each other fix their appliances, and I pop in there daily to help out. When your dishwasher stops mid-cycle, it's usually not a dead control board or major failure. Think of your dishwasher like a series of safety checkpoints. If any sensor, door, water level, or temperature can't communicate properly, the control board often shuts down immediately to help prevent potential water damage or overheating. The good news, we can diagnose this in about 15, 20 minutes using simple tests. Real world breakdown. Door latch problems are the big culprit, followed by water inlet issues, then safety fuses, pump problems, drainage blockages, and heating element failures. Think in layers. We've got mechanical safety stuff, water flow systems, electrical protection, and heating circuits. Our job is figuring out which layer failed with the fastest checks first. One common issue I encounter in service calls is the door latch assembly going bad. Here's what's actually happening. Your dishwasher has micro switches that tell the control board the door is properly closed and locked. When those switches fail or the latch mechanism gets loose, the machine thinks the door popped open mid-cycle and immediately shuts down as a safety measure. You'll know this is your problem when you see the start resume light flashing, or the door seems to pop open just a tiny bit during the cycle. A customer kept pushing on the door every few minutes to keep the cycle going, which could be due to a loose strike plate that had worked loose over time. Here's your 30-second test. Close the door and listen for a solid click. If it sounds weak or mushy, that's your problem. You can also gently push on the door during a cycle. If that restarts the machine, you found your culprit. For the fix, you'll need a screwdriver and possibly a multimeter. Sometimes it's just a loose screw on the strike plate, but if you see cracked plastic or the multimeter shows no continuity, replace the whole assembly, typically $20 to $75, way cheaper than calling someone like me. Another super common one is the water inlet valve going bad. This little guy controls water coming into your dishwasher, and when it fails, your machine will drain out the initial rinse water and then just sit there waiting for water that's never going to come. Here's what happens behind the scenes. The valve has solenoid coils that open and close the water flow, plus little screens that filter debris. Over time, those solenoids burn out, or the screens get clogged with mineral deposits and junk from your water supply. Here's how to spot this problem. Your dishwasher hums and sounds like it's working, but if you open the door after 5 minutes, the tub is completely dry. The machine may stop the cycle due to a detected issue. This is different from a pump problem. You're hearing the motor try to work, but there's simply no water coming in to wash with. To test this, you can use a multimeter to check continuity on the solenoid coils. Should read somewhere between 500 and 1500 ohms. Also pull off that bottom kick plate and visually inspect those little inlet screens for crud. If the solenoid's dead, you're replacing the whole valve. These aren't really repairable and you're looking at about 30 to 120 bucks depending on your model. If your dishwasher suddenly goes completely dead mid-cycle, no lights, no sounds, totally unresponsive, you're probably looking at a blown thermal fuse. This safety device cuts all power when things get too hot. The key symptom is that it happens during operation and the machine won't respond to any buttons afterward, even after unplugging and plugging back in. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Excessive heat doesn't just mean overheating. Short circuits, component failures, even just age can cause these fuses to blow as a
Connect
protective
device to
measure.
door switch
I had
network.
this lady convinced her control board was fried because the dishwasher went completely dark during the heated dry cycle. Turned out to be a $20 thermal fuse that had done its job protecting everything else. The tricky part is finding the thing. Depending on your model, it might be on the control board itself, near the heating element, or tucked away in the wiring harness. You'll need a multimeter to test for continuity. If it's blown, there's no fixing it. You replace the fuse. But here's the critical part. Some manufacturers include a new wiring harness with the fuse kit, and you absolutely want to use it. Skipping that step might lead to repeat failures. All
Use a
right, so
flathead
this one's more
screwdriver
common
to
on
help
certain
pry the
models,
hose away
especially
from the
Whirlpool
component.
and Kenmore
Now,
dishwashers.
carefully pull the
But when the wash
circulation
motor
pump
starts
away from
going
the
bad,
sump.
you get
Use a
this weird
flathead
situation where
screwdriver to
everything
help.
seems normal, but nothing actually gets clean. The machine fills up, you hear it click and hum, but there's no whooshing sound of water spraying around. Then it just sits there like it's stuck. Here's what's happening inside. These motors have graphite bushings that wear out over time, and when they go bad, the armature starts wobbling and eventually binds up completely. Sometimes it's a bad capacitor, sometimes debris gets stuck in the impeller, but worn bushings are the big killer on these units. This is actually a known design weakness. Those bushings wear into an oval shape instead of staying around, and once that happens, you're done. You can try the old tap test. Literally tapping the motor housing with a screwdriver handle sometimes unsticks it temporarily, but if the bushings are short, you're looking at replacing the whole pump assembly. Fair warning, this is not an easy DIY job. You're talking about pulling the dishwasher out of the cabinet and laying it on its back. Motor assembly runs about 100 to 170 bucks, but the labor involved is significant. Drainage problems are sneaky because they don't always show up right away. Your dishwasher will run through most of the cycle, but when it comes time to drain, it just sits there with standing water in the bottom. The control board waits and waits for that water level to drop, and eventually it times out and shuts down the whole cycle. The usual suspects are food debris like popcorn kernels, seeds, and small glass pieces. But here's the hidden culprit. If you have a garbage disposal, there's a plastic knockout plug that must be removed during dishwasher installation. This gets overlooked constantly and completely blocks drainage. Check your disposal's dishwasher connection port. If you see a plastic disc, that needs to come out. Grease buildup is another big one, especially if you're not scraping plates properly before loading. The air gap,
Remove the
that
tube,
little cylinder
flush
on
it
your
all out,
countertop
actually
next to
get
the
a
sink,
pipe
gets
cleaner in there
clogged with
maybe and
gunk,
scrub
and
it.
nobody
Or
ever
what I
thinks
really
to
should
clean
do,
it.
which is
For
what I'm going to do here,
diagnosis,
is do the
you're
right
looking
thing
for
and just put the
standing
right
water in the tub after a cycle. You can hear the drain pump trying to work, but the water's not moving. This is actually one of the easier fixes most of the time. Clean out the air gap, pull and rinse the filters, maybe snake the drain hose if you're feeling ambitious. Usually costs you nothing but some elbow grease. Last one is heating element problems, and this creates some weird symptoms that can really throw you off. When the heating element fails, your dishwasher might fill and start washing, but if the water
About
doesn't
five
reach the
seconds, you're going to
target
see these
temperature
three
within a
lights
certain
start
time frame,
flashing.
the
That lets us
control
know that
board
we've
just
gotten
gives up
in.
and stops the
We're going to hit
cycle.
the
Here's
first button
what's
one
happening.
time.
The control board is programmed to wait
I-10.
for water to
That is
hit,
the
say, 120 degrees. If the element is burned out, that's never going to happen. So the machine just sits there indefinitely, waiting for a temperature it can't achieve. You'll notice the water stays cold during the wash, and your dishes come out wet at the end instead of being dried by residual heat. Sometimes you'll see visible damage on the element, blistering, or actual breaks in the coil. Testing is straightforward with a multimeter, should read somewhere between 15 and 30 ohms for continuity. Now, here's something that trips up a lot of DIYers. On modern digital units, especially Whirlpool and KitchenAid, even after you replace a bad element, you need to run a specific diagnostic sequence to reset the control board logic. The board basically remembers that there was a heater fault and keeps the heating system disabled until you manually clear it. Don't ask me how I figured that one out, but I've seen people replace perfectly good elements because they didn't know about the reset procedure. The door latch assembly, you're looking at somewhere between 20 and 75 bucks depending on your model. This is actually one of the easier DIY jobs if you're comfortable with basic tools. Usually just requires removing the inner door panel with some Torx screws. The tricky part is getting the strike plate aligned properly, but it's definitely doable for most folks. Now, if the mounting bracket inside the cabinet is damaged, that's where you might want to call a pro. Water inlet valves run about 30 to $120. Moderate difficulty job. You need to access the bottom of the machine and deal with water line connections. The key is shutting off your water supply first and having a bucket handy. If you're comfortable with basic plumbing connections, this is totally DIY able. If the thought of dealing with water lines makes you nervous, don't be a hero. Call someone. Thermal fuses are cheap, usually 20 to 40 bucks. The labor is pretty easy if you can remove the control panel and use a multimeter. Remember what I said about the wiring harness though. If the kit includes new wiring, use it. If you see any signs of melted or burned wiring beyond what the harness covers, that's probably service call territory. Pump motors are where things get expensive. 100 to $170 for the part, and this is legitimately a difficult repair. You're pulling the dishwasher out, flipping it over, dealing with the sump assembly. If you're handy and have the space to work, it can be done. But if there are any leaks around the motor seal, you might be looking at sump damage, and that's definitely professional repair territory. All right, if you're dealing with faulty parts, let's talk about what you're looking at cost-wise and when it makes sense to DIY versus calling someone like me. The good news is most of these parts are pretty reasonable, and the labor is where service calls get expensive. Here's the breakdown on the most common replacement parts you'll need. Now, before we wrap up, you can see right there on your screen some of the most common models that experience these mid-cycle stopping issues. Maybe you'll spot your own unit there. The patterns I mentioned, those Bosch control board solder joint problems, the Whirlpool and Kenmore motor bushing issues. These aren't random failures. These are design weaknesses that show up across entire model families over time. That's how you diagnose a dishwasher that stops mid-cycle. Here's your quick checklist. First, test the door latch, listen for a solid click. Second, check for standing water in the tub. Third, look for completely dead power. That's your thermal fuse. Fourth, listen during fill cycle. No water means inlet valve problems. Fifth, check for unusual motor sounds during wash. Work through these common causes first before assuming expensive control board failures. Early warning signs matter here. If your door doesn't click solidly, if cycles have been taking longer than usual, or if you're seeing intermittent stopping, you're usually looking at a small problem that's about to become a big one. Remember, this failure pattern isn't unique to one brand. Any appliance with safety interlocks, water level controls, and temperature monitoring can fail the same way. If you guys know someone who's having appliance troubles, please send them the link to this video or a link to my channel where I have tons of other videos showing how to fix pretty common issues with appliances, sometimes for free or as little cost as possible. It sure beats having a repairman come out and spending several hundred for them to fix it when it could be something so simple. If this helped you get your dishwasher running again, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Let me know which fix worked for you. Really helps other people with the same problem. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We'll get this out to more folks who need to save some time and money. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.